Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor and his friends give you sports betting tips. I'm your host, Professor Sides, and in this episode of Major League Baseball Picks, all on the prices that make for good bets using the predictive mathematical model I have built, known as Sideline, for games scheduled to be played on Wednesday, July 26, 2023. In case you're new here, check out the webpage on the banner. It's www.pickswiththeprofessor.com/new for some explanations and community rules. Remember, if you're interested in projections and picks for every single game, sign up on Dub Club. That link's in the show description. Costs under $1 per day. You will get money lines, run lines, first fives, totals, numbers needed for A-grade plays, recommended numbers where, I'm looking to play a total, all sorts of goodies there, and, of course, exclusive access to our Discord chat. Remember that sports are unpredictable, so the discussion in this show projects a typical game, does not try to forecast it to a T as it'd be a foolish and impossible goal. There are no right sides or wrong sides, but rather prices where any side should be played. Whether using my model or someone else's, this sort of probabilistic thinking is key to growing your bankroll instead of draining it. There are ups and downs, but this sort of thinking balances that out in the long run. It's just hard to foresee before it happens. In other words, please understand that good and bad variance will occur. So with a long-run profitability has been proven, winning every single day is an impossible reality for any gambler. Cousin Jared, good to have you back on here. We had a good day with Jake yesterday. Unfortunately, he's not here to revel in that glory, but I think 4-1 on the picks that we gave out here, and then the one that I gave out over on TikTok and Instagram with that total hitting. A good day overall. All the overall totality of A-grade plays, the A-plus play of the day hit, all the totals, I think went 4-1-1. And the one push was a first 5 under that I think had one run through 4 innings. It was a Guardians game, and then pushed us in that 5th inning with a 4-run outburst there. Good day yesterday. It's fun to finally get out of that little funk that was the last 8 days or whatever it was. Always more exciting to wake up and talk about baseball after a good day than on a bad day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you're saying no pressure for me to match anything that Jake may have done yesterday.
No pressure. But I mean, if nothing else, I think I figured out the key to the success. And I told this to our Discord people, so they're already aware of this. But last night, we're in New York City here. Only for today's our last day. We're leaving tomorrow after record the show. But last night I went to the gala performance of Back to the Future. I had no idea it was the gala performance. Honestly, I didn't even know what a gala performance was. Apparently it's the first show after the previews where they lock everything in and they bring all the bigwigs in before, everyone was there. Michael J. Fox was there. Christopher Lloyd was there. I almost ran into Christopher Lloyd in the lobby. They brought him in at the very last second. I'm running out to use the restroom right before the show, and I was a foot away from running into him. Steven Spielberg was there. Huey Lewis was there. The entire everybody, everybody was there. Yeah. Everybody's in tuxedos. I'm in athletic shorts and flip flops. At least I had a polo on. We had no idea. It was most of the seats were invite only. We went to the shop or whatever, and the lady was like, did you get invited? We were like, no, we just bought tickets. She was like, oh, it was invite only up until they released a couple. We had no idea. So apparently the secret to the success for a good Major League Baseball day is don't watch baseball because you're going to some event where you are extremely underdressed. I don't know how to replicate that personally, so no pressure on me either, right?
Yeah. And I think the biggest event that I have coming up is I think there's a Shake Shack opening that's 10 miles away from me, which is about 15 miles closer than the current closest one is to me, and that will be celebrated in my house.
I have no words for that. I'm happy for you. I had Shake Shack here while we were in New York City because I feel like that's a thing you've got to do. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it just wasn't as good as I feel like I remember it being before. It was a little disappointing.
I mean, it's good. To me, I feel like it doesn't get as much pub as In-N-Out. Oh God, the comments are gonna blow up in this video. Yeah, but I feel like it's very similar to In-N-Out. Just nobody talks about it. So
yeah.
Although I'm getting an In-N-Out literally at the front of my neighborhood. It's going to be 1.5 miles away. And I may go in a year when the line isn't, wrapped around the building 3 times.
Yeah. I haven't had In-N-Out in quite a while. I feel like my disappointment with them is the French fries. We're just not that good. I'm a big fry guy. Yeah. We did last night eat at a place that was reasonably priced for New York City. It was a place that only does steak, only one type of steak, one price, unlimited French fries. And I mean, Mrs. Professor picked this out and she nailed it. It was fantastic. It was flake steak. So it was a weaker cut, but they cooked it amazingly well. And if you take a weaker cut of steak, but you know how to cook it, they cooked it great. The fries were great. They were real potato fries, but they were like crispy and salty. And I mean, it was just steak and fries, and it was fantastic. It was one of the things I've had in forever.
I don't know if I've heard of a better restaurant for you, like just personally, like some place that was made specifically for you. By the way, we're gonna have to like timestamp this so somebody can just like skip this.
I mean, I always do. I always timestamp the first game. So I would love to know how many people just like actually skip through this and how many people. Problem is, if you skip through it, you're not hearing this. Anyway, we gotta have a little fun here too, as we get going here. But we will talk baseball here. And before we get to that, though, just some quick reminders. Please hit that like button for YouTube. Also, if you aren't yet, please consider subscribing or following. It's free. And if you turn on notifications, you'll miss any of the MLB, college basketball, college football coming this fall, NFL content that this channel provides. You can see how I scale picks in the Google sheet that has the season results. That links in the show description. All sorts of team metrics as well. But as always, the scaling and the picks, take what you like and leave the rest. Cousin Jared, again, by accident or not, you have chosen an early afternoon, a late afternoon, and an evening game. Well done. I'm sure our viewers are happy to have some spaced out plays. I'm sure you're planning to do this. If you come on next Wednesday and don't do this, I think our listeners might be a little disappointed.
Listen, I am usually lying in bed on the verge of sleep by the time that we pick these games. And so I promise there is no rhyme or reason. It's just looking at the phone and being like, hey, this seems good.
It worked out well here. Marlins and Rays. This was our A+ play of the day yesterday. Rays with a nice, easy winner for us. Today, it's going to be Sandy Alcantara and Zach Eflin. Alcantara, I mean, what a just change of a season from last year for him. This year, a 4.70 ERA. Now, his advanced metrics are a little bit more promising than that. I don't think he's been quite that bad, but it's obviously been a far cry. And as always now, when a pitcher completely changes from really good or really bad, from the season before, you have the question asking, how much do you weight last season's data versus this season? You can't throw it out completely, but you obviously can't just rely on that. And that's the great question to ask yourself with Alcantara. Eflin's a guy we've been backing all season, have been touting him, loving him. 3.36 ERA, advanced metrics say that is exactly where he should be. Model says these two pitchers are pretty even, which is crazy because there was definitely a time at the end of last year where Eflin was, I think, pitching in the bullpen for the Phillies, and I would have said there is no way that Sandy Alcantara and Zach Eflin should even be mentioned in the same paragraph, same book, same anything. And right now, the model says these two pitchers are basically the same. Offensively, of course, the Rays have the edge. Bullpen-wise, probably a slight edge to the Marlins, but not by a ton. And the biggest benefit of Sandy pitching last year was all those innings he ate, and of course, that might be part of why he's struggling this year, coming off of just what was such a heavy workload for him last year and kind of nullified the Marlins' more mediocre bullpen. This year, the Marlins bullpen's fine. So the fact that he has the possibility of going deeper, he hasn't done it much this year because of his struggles, isn't actually as helpful since the Marlins have a good bullpen as it was last year. We're going to be on the Rays here at a price of -153. Again, locked this in last night. Current price is -163, so it's a full-time higher. Still the same grade, though. -154 or better right now would be an A grade. When we locked this in, this was a B+ pick, and it just missed the A grade threshold. If you could get -153 right now, it actually would be an A grade. The threshold for the B grade -168 model says it should be -179, and that the Rays win this 64% of the time. Cousin Jared, tell us more.
Yeah, so I, like you, or like most people probably, I hate fading Alcantara, even though it's probably been good this season with how he has actually pitched. But this is where I rely on Sideline to kind of look at those underlying metrics, look at the numbers that I can't see with a lot of the surface stats that we have available, and see that he's still a very, very good pitcher. But in my mind, the fact that he hasn't been that great this season, and then surely the discrepancy here, because if you're looking at Alcantara's rating and Eflin's rating, they're fairly similar according to Sideline. In my mind, and this is a question I have for you, if you could confirm this for me, just based on what I've seen with my eyes, I think the Rays offense is that much better than the Marlins offense, right? That even a grade like -153, -164, whatever it might be right now, that's still a valuable play just because the Rays offense is that much better than the Marlins offense.
Yeah, absolutely. The Rays being at home helps them a little bit out, and that's the biggest discrepancy in this game. It's about a 2 standard deviation difference between the offenses. That's a whole lot of space there. The Marlins just below average at a 95. Again, 100 is average, and higher means more runs. The Rays are at a 126. Both of them get a slight ding for facing righties. They're both a little bit right-handed heavy, but it's rounding error at that point. So yeah, you've got a massive edge here. That's the biggest difference in this game. Is the Rays offense. We know the Rays offense has been good. They've been a little more up and down as of late, but even the Rays offense being down is still better than this Marlins offense, and at home. That's kind of like you were saying. That's how the model comes up with the probability to say what's a good pick, and that's where, like you said, relying on that would lead you to this is a smart selection.
Yep.
Total in this game is 7.5. Model says 7.9. I might be talking to going over a 7 if that ever gets out there, just because that push protection on an odd number, especially 7 and 9 being your two most common outcomes in baseball games. But at 7.5, I would pass. Cousin Jared, my return question for you on this one really just stems around Sandy, because I think he's such a fascinating pitcher to talk about. He was last year, of course, with how good he was. When you see a guy struggling, through the first half of the season, first 2/3 of the season at this point, almost like him, how do you go about assessing that? Obviously, you look at the sideline rating for the pitcher, you look at the probability, et cetera, but what other things are you looking at? Do you go back and look at the game logs? You look at how he's done the last month. Do you ever look at it and try to say, maybe he's putting it together, or do you just kind of say, I don't want to overthink it. I just want to look at what the output is? I'm curious how you approach a guy like that, because a guy like Eflin, we thought was going to be good. He's been good. It's pretty straightforward. You don't have to think much, right? Like, you don't have to look at anything deeper. But a guy like Sandy, you can almost spin yourself in circles thinking about how you want to approach him and how different he's been from this year than last year.
Yeah. So generally, I look at we know me. I'm very process driven, and so the fact that I generally just go with whatever grade sideline has. I try not to overthink it. But what I will say is it is about this time of year where I may start overriding sideline if I can tell that there is a specific area that it's really struggling with. So we talk about this every week. Maybe we'll talk about it later today. But like last season with Tony Gonsolin for the Dodgers, sideline was just fade Gonsolin. It didn't really work out a majority of the time.
Yeah.
And like by the time that we got to like August last year, I was like, okay, I probably need to like knock whatever grade sideline gives a fade of Gonsolin, probably need to knock it down like a letter grade, just because it's not happening this season. And that doesn't mean that sideline's not right. It's just maybe there is something happening in that season that is strange. Baseball is one of the most abnormal sports in that you can have an entire season where, for example, for Alcantara, the underlying metrics can be good, but like the performance is just not there for whatever reason, because there's a million things in baseball that are, related to the outcome that I feel like there's just a lot more variables than other sports. So anyway, it is about this time where if I were to make some kind of manual adjustment myself, it would be about now.
Yeah, and you brought up some great points there. And of course, just real quick to finish up with the Sandy discussion, walks per 9 up, strikeouts per 9 down. He's actually even been a little bit lucky, I think, with some of the like home run metrics and stuff like that. It's just the actual, like, he just hasn't pitched as well. Again, part of that could be the wear and tear from last season. It would not be the first time in history we've seen a pitcher throw a lot of innings for one reason or another, pitch deeper into the season, et cetera, and then kind of struggle the next year and then bounce right back. So I'm sure he'll be fine and a good pitcher long term. It's just been a rough year for him. But I think you make an excellent point there, and I do want to just wrap up this discussion by commenting on that, because the other thing to remember is that when you're trying to assess hundreds of pitchers, the model isn't going to be right on every pitcher, and that's totally fine. And that's where you have to look at it and kind of say the model on average is going to be right, but it's going to absolutely miss on a few pitchers. And I'm not afraid to say that and acknowledge that. Now, trying to figure that out is sometimes difficult. And I think if you try to overthink the model, especially early on in the season, you might be, kind of barking up the wrong tree, because you might be chasing the wrong things. And at some point you can kind of say, maybe I'm just going to lay off. Maybe I'm not going to fade the model in the spot because it is trying to see something and tell me something, but maybe I'm not going to trust it either because it will not hit for every pitcher. It's not possible. We talk about it in college football with 120 teams. Talk about in college basketball, 300. It just can't nail every single team. It's not trying to because that would be overfitting and it would not be very predictive. To make it more predictive, it's going to miss on a few teams, but it's going to be right more than wrong. And that's what we talk about the process, et cetera. And so there's a lot of things to think about with that model. But we, of course, talked about Tony Gonsolin. So that, of course, leads us to our next game, 4:10 p.m. Eastern, Blue Jays at the Dodgers. Got both picks last night with the Dodgers in a wild inning. I was long asleep, so I missed it, woke up to it. I was like, wow, that seems crazy. Got the Dodgers with a comeback win, got the over late with these bullpens, which you kind of talk about can be a little bit up and down. This Dodgers bullpen trending the wrong direction in the metrics. Kind of like the Astros bullpen, just good pitchers, I think, just overused because of the starting pitching injuries. That's kind of been the theme for them, and they struggled again last night, but did get it done for us. Was a great inning if you stayed up and watched it. Today, a day game, we have our first, I believe, 90-plus degree day in Dodger Stadium. And in Los Angeles, you don't get a ton of them. You start seeing them here in these day games a little bit, July, August, September. You sometimes see them in October in the playoffs. There was that one game, they had a day game a few years ago. I remember in the playoffs, I think it was Kershaw and Wainwright back in their primes. Kershaw's still in his prime somehow. I'm pretty sure that game was like 7-6 after the third inning or something like that because it was a 100-degree day. When you get up into the 90s, it gets wild there in Los Angeles. According to Sideline, that's going to boost the runs 17%. Massive hitter-friendly day. The ball is just going to fly there. Two solid pitchers with respect to ERA, both of them under 4 for Kikuchi. That's about where the model says he should be based off how he's pitched. Based off historical data, dings him a little bit more, slightly below average. Of course, Gonsolin's a guy we've long talked about. Underlying metrics suggest his ERA should be more in the mid-4s to 5s. So a guy who I'm very happy to fade, has not had as good of a season. Offensively, though, these two teams can get it done. We know that. Our pick here, over 10. Locked this in last night. Price hasn't really moved. Model says 11.6. Cousin Jared, tell us more about why you like this over.
Yeah, so when I go look at the weather adjustments every day for what these totals should be, and I see a 17% adjustment for the weather in Chavez Ravine tonight, that is just as great as it could possibly be, because when it gets hot, it's not Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati or anything like that. But when it gets hot, let me tell you, the runs can come in bunches out there when they're playing in Los Angeles. So again, we kind of know, I mean, we know my opinion of Gonsolin. I so badly wanted Sideline to be right all of last season about Gonsolin. And it seems like finally we got there. So that's part of it. And the other thing is that the Blue Jays, obviously, we know they have a good offense, but Sideline, even going back to last season, Sideline has been like really bullish on the Blue Jays offense. And so you would rarely get the opportunity to play an over in the Jays game, unless you're in a situation like this where you've got a lot of like weather factors that are kind of upping the total. So anyway, for me, this is one of those things where I get to fade Gonsolin in a sense, and I get to back the Blue Jays offense, which we don't usually get the opportunity to do. So we sometimes talk about run, don't walk. For me, this was a run and grab the over 10. Don't walk to get it.
And we talked about with Jake yesterday, the offense for this Dodgers team is just so good. It's always fun to back them with an over because I just saw last night they can put up runs in a hurry. And the benefit, of course, is being a 4:10 Eastern game. That's 1:10 local time. So there's no sun going down, going to cool it off. I mean, it's going to be hot from first pitch to last pitch. The actual projected temperature is the same 93 degrees right now at first pitch and last pitch. So it's not like it's going to cool off and you need the runs to come early. If they don't get runs early, you got chances later. But you and I both think there will be a lot of runs early, which takes us to our player prop of the day. We are going to be fading Tony Gonsolin under 16.5 out. As you can see here on Outlier, he has gone under this number 9 of his 15 starts this season. And you can see there he has a lot of right at 15s. I think this is a situation we always talk about, can he get run early because he gives up a lot of runs? That's absolutely possible. Even though the Dodgers bullpen has been worn out. They've been worn out all season, and he's still often only going 5. So it's not a situation where you look at it and you say, oh, well, the bullpen for the Dodgers has been overworked and they've got to really try to stretch him out. That's been the case from almost not quite day 1, but I mean, day like 30 of this season, maybe even earlier than that, it's been the case. And he's mostly just gone 5 innings. It's a hot day that leads to extra fatigue. On a hot day, it's not going to be a situation where you want your pitcher throwing 100 pitches. Why? Because your mechanics are going to start to fail because you're fatigued, and that's going to lead to injury. So everyone knows this by now. We didn't know this, quite as well, or only a handful of people maybe knew it 10 years ago, 20 years ago, especially 30 years ago. And so on a hot day, it didn't matter. They were just going to keep going out and pitching, and the pitchers would hold back or whatever. Now it's just a different game. We know more. The approaches are different. There's just no reason for a guy to pitch that deep into a game unless he's cruising in a day like this because of the injury concern, especially with all the injuries the Dodgers have. They don't need him hurt. Adding to that list, under 16.5 is a strong play, and according to Outlier plus expected value. Cousin Jared, I actually gave you the option. I have 3 props that I like today. I gave the other 2 already to the Discord. So if you like player props, again, sign up on that Discord. I'm giving out more over there on via Dub Club at links in the show description. You actually chose this one. I said, hey, I like 3. I'm going to give you the opportunity. You chose this one. Is there more than just we like fading Gonsolin? Where's your thought as to why this was the best of those 3 that I gave you the choice between?
No, I think it's also the weather, just because it's going to only take like 1 or 2 small mistakes, and there could be runs in bunches. It wouldn't surprise me if he's given up like 3 runs through 2 innings, and then he gets a quick hook in like the 4th inning or something like that. So this is a lot to do. I mean, yes, it is partially to do with fading Gonsolin, but it's also just to do with the weather. I think it might be tough for him or Kikuchi to get a lot of innings today.
Yeah, Kikuchi's absolutely in the same boat. I think his prop wasn't quite advantageous based off the price because he's been a guy that everyone kind of knows mostly only goes 5 innings. Hasn't been as dominant last year, that sort of thing. And going up against the Dodgers offense, which is just incredible. Yeah, I think you're right. I think both these pitchers easily are going to give up a crooked number early on. And then once that happens, that pitch count gets driven up, and you tend to see, like you said, come 4th inning, come 5th inning, something like that. You get 2 guys on, and the bullpen is up in a hurry, and they're getting hot fast. I mean, it's one of those like, any one more thing and you're gone. And that's kind of the setup here. And even if not, like we've seen him a lot of times just get through 5 and then turn it over to the bullpen. So there's a couple ways to win this. Always like when that's the case. And remember, if you want to get access to all these analytics, see Outliers plus expected value plays, you can sign up for a free 7-day trial at Outlier.bet/professor, and the links in the show description. They integrate seamlessly with your favorite domestic sports book, allowing you to shop for prices across those 4 big domestic books. You can see trends, analyze data, all sorts of stuff, easily flip between the hits and walks and runs and all the different things there. Of course, they have hitter props too. I focus on pitching, but they got all sorts of goodies. They're sign up today for a free trial if you haven't yet. And if you're not already playing daily fantasy, check out Thrive. You can pick an entire lineup of players and enter a contest against 1, 2, 4, 9 other people and take home a prize there. Or just do like parlaying props. Pick a couple of props that you like, and if they all win, you win. New users that use the promo code SIDES or the sign-up link in the show description receive a 100% instant first deposit match up to $250. So sign up today and take advantage of some free money. And that will take us to our last game of the day here. Braves at the Red Sox. Had the over in this last night. And Cousin Jared, I really debated hard splitting the wager between first 5 over and full game over. The first 5 hits, the full game didn't last night. So that's just kind of the way it goes sometimes. And it goes like I'm always saying, you got to find a process. I've struggled a little bit trying to find the totals process. The math's a little bit more tricky, and how deep do you want to really dive into the Poisson distribution? Do the assumptions hold? I can get really nerdy with that if you all want. I'm sure most people don't, but trying to figure out your process with that. Again, we had the first 5 over last night. Couldn't pull the trigger on that. The full game didn't quite hit, but you can see these games, runs come in bunches in Fenway in general. And you have another situation where the weather's going to help. Going to start off in the mid 80s. That's pretty warm for Boston for a night game. You typically aren't going to see that. It's still going to close close around 80 degrees, wind to be blowing out. So you have another massive hit. This was just a massive hitter-friendly ballpark in general, one of the top few in baseball, a good weather spot. Two really good pitchers, though, Spencer Strider and Brian Bayo. Both of these guys have pretty similar ERAs. Strider is the much better pitcher, though. The underlying metrics suggest Strider's been pretty unlucky this season. His ERA should be about a full run lower. Bayo, good. Strider, great. I don't think that's really breaking any news. Both these offenses are pretty good. I kind of feel like this is a carbon copy of the game we just talked about. It's not, I think the weather is a little bit more hitter friendly in LA, but the park is a little bit more friendlier here. And the weather is also hitter friendly as well. So it's just a subtle, slight difference there, but it's kind of a similar setup, maybe better pitching in this one. But, in Fenway, sometimes that pitching advantage can disappear in a hurry. But I mean, it's kind of the same situation. Two good offenses. Braves offense is fantastic. The Red Sox offense is still pretty good themselves. We're also going to go over on this one. The number is 9.5. Model projects 11.6. Cousin Jared, tell us more.
Yeah, so when I talked about looking at the park or the weather adjustments when we were talking about the Dodgers game. So if you aggregate weather adjustments plus park dimensions for this game, you get kind of the biggest adjustment on the board, and that is the biggest positive adjustment on the board because you can give up lots of runs quickly at Fenway on a not great weather day. But when the weather sets up like this, you can definitely have a lot of runs. The other thing I would say is, yes, sometimes it's a hold your nose and play it pick when Strider's on the mound because you want to say, hey, he's going to have 10 strikeouts through 5 innings. He's not going to give that many base runners. It's going to be tough for people to score lots of runs. But I will remind you that we did this last week. We took the over, or the full game over was a sideline play when the Diamondbacks and the Braves played, and it was Gallen and Strider, a better pitching matchup than what we have right here. And everything was great through the first 5 innings. And then all hell broke loose in the last 4. And so I think that was a pretty similar weather day in Atlanta to what you're going to have in Boston today. So anyway, where I'm going with this is you could still get 5 good innings from Strider, and this game could still easily go over, whether that's the Braves bullpen that you mentioned has been a little bit under the weather as of recent, or, maybe they just get to Strider. You get one fly ball that's going, 10 extra feet because of how hot it is, and boom, there's a home run that would have been an out before. So I think this weather situation is just too good of an opportunity to pass up. Even with Strider going, I think this game could easily go over.
And we were talking about the Braves bullpen before we recorded. The Braves, relievers now, a few injuries. That's why they're looking to, I think they just acquired someone here a couple of days ago. I think they're looking to acquire more help in their pen. When fully healthy, this Braves bullpen is pretty good, but, not fully healthy right now, and maybe not quite as strong as we expect. It's still a good bullpen, but just not quite that dominant force that we expected and that we kind of saw in years past. Strider's been a real 5-inning pitcher this year. Sometimes he can get to 6, but this doesn't set up to be a game that he can get to 6. The Red Sox don't strike out a lot. What that means for a high strikeout pitcher like Strider is a high pitch count. If he's only going 5 and we've got to get 4 innings out of this Braves bullpen in this park in these conditions. Again, it's not that their bullpen's terrible, but it's just going to really be hard for them to put the clamp down on a good Boston offense. And again, with the wind blowing out and a warm day in the ball carrying, for center field, it may not matter quite as much because it's a wonky center field out there. But when you talk about going to left and right field, that's really going to matter for this park because the ball carrying, the wind blowing out, it's either going to get balls over the fence or especially to left field, it's going to push them and make routine fly balls are going to be doubles off the monster. And that's just going to keep innings going longer and longer. Like you said, it's the combined effect here. It's a good weather day and a good hitter park in general could get some fireworks. Cousin Jared, my question for you on this one is this projected total is 11.6. We're playing over 9.5. Would you play over 10, over 10.5, over 11? Where's your threshold on this game?
So if I were speaking to a normal person, I would say I would still play this at over 10.5. Me personally, I think I would still play this at over 11. And again, this is just me because I like to be right. I like to be right. I think I would play this definitely. Fair. I would play it over 10, 10.5, probably still play it over that. Even at 11, I would strongly consider it because I think the runs are going to come in bunches in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And then my last question, we talked about the first five here. How do you look at first five full game? Do you dabble in the first five market? Are you a guy that, does look to split your wager, kind of like we talked about there,
Yeah.
and the pros and cons? There's a lot to kind of dive into with that, because by splitting your wager, you at least prevent, losing one, but you may end up prevent yourself from winning one too. And so there's kind of a lot to discuss there. And in this game like this, of course, the relievers aren't bad. It's not like we're trying to fade the bullpens here.
No.
It's more about just the situation. So I'm just curious your take on first five full game and how you kind of approach that in your handicapping.
Yeah, so generally I look at side. Okay, so for sides, I just look at what Sideline has to say. If it says it's an A grade on the first five, I probably do that. What I would say more for totals is I try to do, and the people in the Discord kind of saw me mention this last week when the Braves and the Diamondbacks played. I try to find where there are discrepancies between the totals for the full game and the first five. And what I mean by that is Sideline had a projection of like 3.5 runs for the first 5 innings of the Diamondbacks Braves game last week with Gallen and Strider going, but the full game total was 9.5. There is almost no way logically that the books could set an accurate first five total and an accurate full game total in that scenario. Like they were going to set themselves up where one of those numbers was going to be way off, and it just so happened.
And it kind of turned out both were, which is hilarious.
Yes.
That was a weird outcome, right? That shouldn't have happened, right? It was kind of an outlet that both got off, but you're right. In general, like one of them kind of had to have an edge somewhere.
Yeah. And so that's more what I'll do is I'll look at kind of what Sideline has for the first five and the full game total. And I don't know, once a week, twice a week, there's going to be like some game where they just cannot get both right. And it's really more try to find those types of situations and, really jump on those opportunities when they present themselves.
Yeah, it's a good point. And of course, last week I think was the Mona Lisa of you giving out the first five under to the Discord, me giving out from a Sideline full game over, and somehow hitting both. I don't, that's just almost impossible. It's almost like taking the first five on one side and then taking the full game on the other and winning. You're not. It's not that it doesn't happen. It's just hard to predict it, right? And of course, nailing it like that was a lot of fun. We think there will be a ton of runs here tonight in Boston. Again, remember, if you're with us on Dub Club, there you get the first five and the full game projection, so you can kind of compare both. And I see a lot of times that the first five projection, the full game projection are both in line with the books have, but there's a lot of times where one is spot on with the books and one is different. And that's where, again, you start diving into it. Some people are just going to kind of blindly play it and trust the model and trust the process. And for totals, that has absolutely been working. Some people that just triggers them to look into it a little bit more and see if they want to play it. However, your style is a bunch of great information there over on Dub Club. Again, that link is in the show description. But otherwise, that's all we've got for you today. Cousin Jared, any parting words?
I think that there's like 31 days till college football, I believe.
I feel like you're giving me more anxiety every time you say that because I've just got so much work to do on those models.
Well, don't worry, because next week's going to be August, and so then I won't have to make you anxious about it. The calendar will.
Then the calendar, just looking at the calendar. But to be honest, what are days at this point? For summer, days to me are basically, is there daytime baseball or not? That's kind of the only differential I have at this point, personally. Yeah. All right, well, thank you, folks, for tuning in to this episode of Picks with the Professor. Don't forget to subscribe so you can ensure all the sports betting content provided this channel is dropped right into your feed. I'll be back again tomorrow with more sports betting content. But until then, as always, best of luck, and remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.